This is a HeadGum podcast.
Hey buddy, I'm Tiger Wiger, and this is my video audition for the role of Link in the Legend of Zelda movie. I know I'm a little older than you're targeting, but I think I can bring a lot to this character. I'm very passionate for the franchise. Anyway, let me get into the lines you had me prepare as Link. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, action. Hit, hut, hit, hood, hood, hit, hood, hood, hot, hot, hood, 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 hood. Whoops. And scene. Ignore that last part. That last part wasn't part of it. Just ignore the last part. The rest you can just ignore the last part. Anyway, thank you so much for your consideration. I look forward to seeing the movie in theaters starring me. Oh, and I know it's not in the script, but I can also do this. Do. Not part of it. We visit our old friends Donkey Kong and Johnny Storm as I discuss Donkey Kong Bananza and my time working on Fantastic Four video games, plus a chat with Twisted Metal's Mike Mitchell this week on Get Played. Pod on! Wow, it's Get Played, your one-stop show for good games, bad games, and every game in between. It's time to get played. I'm Tiger Wiger. Matt and Heather are both unavailable this week, so I am flying solo. I've heard of solo leveling, but solo podcasting? That's right. Gonna be a bumpy ride. Basically, based on our schedule, the choice was no episode, i.e., we would have an unlocked animated or an unlocked classic episode in the main feed, or a Wiger solo episode. Jesus Christ, I fucked up saying my own name. Bad sign. Like a plane that crashes while taking off. Just doesn't even make it off the runway. It's like straight into a building. It's a Wiger solo episode, just me, and that's the decision we made. You know, I was like, I could leave the feed vacant. Not have a new played episode for this week in a very consequential year of gaming, but I stepped up to the plate. And you know what? I'm going to reverse momentum here. I'm about to knock it out of the park. That's right, jack up those expectations. Also, I just want to address, maybe some of you are concerned that what happened is I murdered Heather and Matt, and I am recording in the HeadGum studios alongside their fresh corpses, possibly, I guess, holding Rochelle hostage, making her record my audio suicide note. That's not what happened. Gotta admit, be compelling audio. People will be sharing that episode. As for what to expect on our journey together, the Fantastic Four First Steps is about to release, which I'm actually kind of excited about in a way I haven't been for an MCU movie in a while. And I have some history with the Fantastic Four franchise by virtue of my time in game development, where I worked on 2 Fantastic Four games. And so I just figured I'd talk about my time doing that and what it was like working in game dev back in the aughts, and what my experience was personally, and what our experience was as a team trying to wrangle that IP, which is once again topical, into a game, or games in this case. So we'll talk about that for a bit. And later in the episode, I have a chat with my Doughboys co-host Mike Mitchell about acting on the Peacock series Twisted Metal. Great show. I know what you're thinking. Wiger, how'd you pull that booking off? Yeah, I wear pretty long sleeves because I got a lot of tricks up them. I'm able to pull some rabbits out of hats. Sometimes that includes locking down Mike Mitchell for a podcast record. Gonna be a lot of fun, but first, let's get to the big news of this week in gaming. From the Blue Sky account SteamDB, quote, Steam has added a new rule allowing games that violate the rules and standards set forth by payment processors and card networks or internet network providers. At the same time, many incest-themed games were removed from the store. This is fucking bullshit. Censorship is wrong. What's next? I'm just saying, it's a slippery slope, people. No, I mean, it honestly is a little bit of a, harbinger of sorrow, if you will, to quote a Metallica song. I could just see the sanitization of the Steam store's content on the horizon to appease, whatever, totalitarian governments, including our own, or just various corporate interests. Well, for the most part, Steam has been pretty good about that sort of thing. But it's a little bit of a bummer to see them sort of starting to kowtow to the demands of, payment processors. What are you going to do? It's interesting. Like I'm such a Steam guy, as I have been for a long time, especially as a PC gamer. And it's been so transformative for gaming, in particular indie gaming, but all gaming. And just as a digital distribution platform that seems to be, for the most part, a fairly benevolent force. And, there is a bummer future where Valve is bought by private equity or something, or the Steam asset is sold off to some predatory corporation, and kind of what's cool about it is stripped away and all these restrictions are placed upon it. And it as we've seen, as we've witnessed things like Tumblr, it doesn't take much to turn a thriving platform into a digital graveyard. So hopefully that's not the case, but minor bummer out there. The big news, of course, is that the Zelda cast was announced. I'll just read this from IGN. Nintendo has confirmed the lead actors for its upcoming live-action The Legend of Zelda movie. Zelda will be played by Bo Bragason and Link by Benjamin Evan Ainsworth. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing either of those names correctly. Bragason, 21, previously appeared in Netflix fantasy adventure series Renegade Nell, as well as BBC crime drama adaptation The Jetty. Ainsworth, aged just 16, has only a handful of roles to his name, though notably appeared in Netflix horror series The Haunting of Bly Manor. I think in the aftermath of the Mario movie and the way that was cast, and I like the Super Mario Brothers movie on balance, a lot of us were concerned that Nintendo was just going to be star chasing with its IP. And this actually makes me think that instead what they were doing is giving a lot of authority to Illumination and how, they cast movies, because Illumination very much does have that philosophy, that star chasing sort of perspective, as we see chiefly in Despicable Me, but also in Secret Life of Pets and what have you. I mean, if you look at the Despicable Me franchise, it's just like perpetually placing some of the most zeitgeisty people at the core of its casting, or just big stars, Steve Carell. The time Despicable Me 1 comes out in 2010, Jason Segel, very hot. Also, funnily, Russell Brand, who's in a few of the movies. But yeah, consistently, that's just how they've cast things. I mean, I think I can say vaguely that I did some work on an Illumination project, and very much that's just sort of their internal calculus. And so, again, just going back to it, I believe what Nintendo's doing here is they're just sort of like, look, the whatever Western collaborator we're entrusting with our IP, we're just going to let them do things the way they're doing them. I'm not saying that they're completely hands off in the process, but it does kind of feel like they're sort of trusting their process, and so it feels like what they're happening here with Wes Ball directing the Zelda movie. They're just sort of saying like, do it the way you want to do it. At least that's purely inference on my part. I could be completely, wrong or full of shit. But I also feel like casting unknowns, or relative unknowns, I should say. They have credits, but, are not household names, is the best hope for this movie, and actually gives me some optimism for it. 28 years later, I'm sure a lot of you have seen. If you haven't, check it out. It's a fantastic movie. One of the best of the year so far. And I don't think it relies on having seen previous films of the franchise. In fact, I can say Natalie saw it without having seen the previous 28 movies. 28 movies. Sounds like there's 28 movies in the franchise previously. That'd really be something. Meaning the previous 28 movies, meaning 28 days later. 28. Is it weeks later? It can't be weeks. Is it weeks? It maybe is weeks. I wish someone was here to tell me if it was weeks. Oh, there's no way to know whether or not it was weeks. Anyway, the kid in that movie is, again, a relative unknown, and I believe only has a few credits. We've talked about him before. Is Alfie Williams the actor? Just absolutely a fantastic performance. And so you hope you can wrangle something like that out of a child actor. A child that, one of them's 21, one of them's 16, so, an older kid, but out of a young actor. And again, I think this puts me in a place where, okay, it feels like they're maybe having a little bit of creative leeway. They're not just having to star chase, by command from the top. And so hopefully that the results in the kind of movie that the Zelda franchise deserves. All right, we should get into the show. Hold on. I missed a call. My phone on Do Not Disturb, which I guess I should be doing. We're recording. Looks like I missed a call from maybe the merchant. Let me just play this voicemail here.
Hey, it's me, the Resident Evil Merchant, and I can't be there this week because I joined a cult. And I might be in over my head, but I want to ask my friends, what are you playing?
Wow. Thanks so much, Resident Evil Merchant. Really nice of them to do that on their off week. I have been playing Donkey Kong Bananza, and let me tell you, I'm having the time of my fucking life. What a fucking video game. Oh, banana. Just been saying that to myself for 2 days. Oh, banana. That's from Donkey Kong 64, right? Is that the genesis of that? Awesome to have it again. If that is correct, actually where it's from, that's not a Mandela effect. By the way, speaking of DK64, where's everybody on the Donkey Kong rap? Because I feel like my personal journey with the Donkey Kong rap mirrors my experience with the Star Wars prequel trilogy. Whereas they originally came out and I was kind of like, what is this? I don't know if I like this. And then some time passed and I was like, wait, I think I love this. And I'm not saying the prequels are flawless films, but they're ambitious films, they're interesting films. And that trilogy is cohesive. And I think it really lands a plane. Unlike the Disney trilogy, which, really peaks with Last Jedi and then Rise of Skywalker is a fucking mess. I feel like it's a grandpa meme now. The bro shake from Predator. But if that meme still existed, if that's not a meme from a land before time, I feel like you'd have like Last Jedi lovers, Last Jedi haters on each side, and in the middle where the bro shake was happening would be Rise of Skywalker sucks. We can't get into it. But seriously, what the fuck was going on with Exegol? How'd they build all those Star Destroyers? You had a bunch of fucking Union shipyards up there on this remote planet, hidden by the Sith? The fuck are you talking about? It also conflates the Sith with the Empire, which is like, that's less interesting than the idea that these things are separate with their own agendas, their own sort of spheres of influence, and Palpatine and Sidious are manipulating them both. Anyway, back to the Donkey Kong rap. At first, I was like, I'm playing Donkey Kong 64, and that game's a bloated mess in a way that Donkey Kong Bananza very much is not so far. I also 100% of that game for some unknown reason. The fuck was I doing with my life? The Donkey Kong rap. So they're finally here performing for you. If you know the words, you can join in too. Put your hands together if you want to clap as we take you through this monkey rap. Starts pretty strong. DK Donkey Kong, we all know. I think a lot of the verses are kind of forgotten and people kind of focus on the first verse. And I'll just do a little bit of this. He's the leader of the bunch. You know him well. He's finally back to kick some tail. Fine. His coconut gun can fire in spurts. If he shoots you, it's gonna hurt. That's where it loses me and a lot of other people. Spurts and hurt feels like a bit of a strained rhyme. That said, Grant Kirkhope, the composer, whose music makes an appearance in Donkey Kong Bananza, as does David Wise's compositions in adjusted remixed forms, was trying to make a funny, jokey sort of rap. It wasn't meant to be taken at face value. So I think once I later hit on that, they're like, oh, the composer was in on the joke. And not in a way, not in like a Tommy Wiseau, like retconning, like everyone's laughing at this thing that was my passion project, so I'm just going to claim it was a joke all along, so I seem like a genius, but like in an actual, like, no, this is a believable, earnest sort of way. It made me actually appreciate it. And I think it was, go back to my prequels reassessment and back to kind of the timeline, for this change of heart. When the song appears in Smash Brothers Melee, then I'm just like, wait, this is fucking great. I love the DK rap. That's how quick that turned into nostalgia for me. It may honestly have just been hitting me too. Like, this hits me as a cynical teenager, and then I reconnect with it as a more earnest adult, even though it was just a few years. God, how long was the delay between Donkey Kong 64 and Melee? 5 years? No way to know. Less than that. Yeah, less than that.
Join the fun on DraftKings Casino, ranked the #1 online casino experience. They've got everything you've been searching for. Thousands of exciting games, huge jackpots, exclusive offers, and more. New players get a 10-day welcome offer, 500 spins on Huff and More Puff when you play just $5 to start. Download the DraftKings Casino app, sign up with code GETPLAYED, and spin your favorite slots. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. 21 plus. Physically present in Connecticut, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia only. Void in Ontario. Eligibility restrictions apply. New customers only. Non-withdrawable casino spins issued as 50 spins per day for 10 days. Valid for featured games only and expire each day after 24 hours. See terms at casino.draftkings.com/promos. Ends August 24th, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. #1 based on Eilers and Krejcik 2H24 product analysis.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Often we get these advertisements on this show and I have no idea what they are and I pretend to use them in my real life. NordVPN is not the case. I use NordVPN. It is saved on my desktop. It's saved on my phone. I use it to shop in region-locked stores and use proxy delivery services. I use it to access digital content that might be on the, say, BBC, rhymes with Y player. It is a fantastic service. You can watch sporting events and TV shows and films that aren't available in your region by switching your virtual location to a country which is showing the event. You can protect your private data like bank details, passwords, and online identity. NordVPN can switch your virtual location, allowing you to save money by purchasing flights, hotels, and subscriptions from other countries at a cheaper price. And you can protect your data whilst traveling and using public Wi-Fi because NordVPN protects you wherever you are in the world. It's the fastest VPN in the world. There's no buffering or lagging while you're streaming, and it stops your ISP bandwidth throttling. One NordVPN account can be used on up to 10 devices. It is premium cybersecurity for the price of a cup of coffee per month. I use it. That's how I get my Gundam t-shirts. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/getplayed. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. NordVPN/getplayed. Here's the thing, guys. I have been traveling recently. I went over to the UK and I'll admit, the Wi-Fi speed, the internet speed when you're traveling abroad, those roaming data cap shit, you have to buy a 50 quid, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough when you're abroad and you've badly needed an internet connection with no Wi-Fi spot in sight. So you understand what a difference a local SIM card can make. An eSIM provides an internet connection wherever you travel and saves you money on roaming fees. That's where Saley comes in. Saley is a new eSIM service app brought to you by the creators of NordVPN. Here you can choose from several affordable eSIM plans in over 190 countries and 8 regions. With a Saley eSIM, you'll always have a connection when needed. Download Saley once and you won't have to install a new eSIM for each country. You can avoid scammers selling fake SIM cards outside train stations and airports, and there are a lot of those guys, believe me. There's no more wandering around looking for a public Wi-Fi spot. With a Saley, you're always connected. They provide 24/7 support, and you get a full refund if your device isn't eSIM compatible. Download the Saley app in your app store. Use code GETPLAYED at checkout to get 15% off your first purchase, or go to saley.com/getplayed. That's SAILY.com/getplayed.
Anyway, Donkey Kong Bananza, which I'm supposed to be talking about. Designed by a Nintendo EPD, Kazuya Takahashi, one of the directors, previously worked on Final Fantasy 15. Beyond that, a lot of Nintendo veterans, it seems like, on the team. When I get into talking about Fantastic Four games, I might talk about the challenge of making a character feel powerful. It's specifically like physically powerful, and how much of that needs to be accomplished with, like, you know, hit frames and screen shake and sound design. All of these aesthetic considerations that kind of force feedback that really like hammer home how potent a character is, how a character has real weight to their movement and their attacks. Donkey Kong Bananza absolutely accomplishes that. It is there, so forefronted, it's so effective. You feel like Juggernaut. It invited comparisons to, you know, Hulk Ultimate Destruction, a game I have a lot of affection and nostalgia for, and yeah, it very much kind of it like feels like that in a modern sense. The terrain deformation is really something to marvel at, just how much you can completely just fuck up an environment. I remember when Duke Nukem 3D had like one set piece where you could destroy a building, and that feeling mind-blowing. And then later on you have games like Red Faction, I feel like was the first big one I remember where destroying terrain was a big part of it. Obviously, we live in a post-Minecraft world, the most influential game of the century, and maybe, I don't know, one of the biggest movies, I guess, biggest franchises in existence. And yeah, this definitely goes all, you know, basically almost all the way to the Minecraft extreme of just being able to do whatever you want in terms of altering the play space. The other thing I really respond to is just a sense of forward momentum. And again, that goes back to the Juggernaut comparison, but it's just like, just really feels like you're going for it. And I think the design decision to make dedicated buttons for punch forward, punch up, and punch down is one of those things where it's like, that's not an obvious choice. That's a thing I feel like they go through with play testing and prototyping and just having the time to figure out how do we want to make Donkey Kong feel like Donkey Kong. And it works so well. So used to altering the directionality of an attack via, you know, like stick movement or D-pad movement, and to have it just like mapped to a dedicated button is so satisfying, and again makes the action so frenetic and so kinetic. I jump map to the A button is maybe a little bit awkward. It's a little bit of a reach, but also like you're just kind of doing less of that due to the nature of traversal here. I love the Pauline reveal. I wish Matt was here because I would tell Matt the way Pauline emerges, I was shocked. And I think she's a really fun character, and she's a great sidekick. Also, you get different wardrobe here. I love changing my clothes in a game. And I love that they're just not purely cosmetic. Some of them give little advantages, you know? It's really fun. It's really rewarding. The Minecraft comparisons are obvious, but like, there's also like a Wario Land feel to it, of just collecting so much loot, collecting so much treasure. I love how many collectibles there are. I love how large your pool of whatever the currency is exact. I don't know. I just feel like I'm picking up a lot of like gold shit. Obviously, you got the big bananas you're busting up, and then you're an oh banana. Doesn't get old to me. I'll take that on a loop. I just love collecting a lot of shit. You're just running around, you're fucking shit up, you're picking stuff up, you're making a mess, and you're reaping the rewards. It's so gratifying. I've been kind of like thinking about development a lot naturally in preparation for this episode, and like a developer told me, was talking about the magic of Diablo 2 back when I worked in the industry, and they were basically just saying it's pretty simple, constant rewards. And that's what this game feels like. It's just constant rewards. Vampire Survivors, a game that owes its existence in some level, several steps removed to like a Diablo 2 and other dungeon crawlers, is a constant rewards game. And that's what this feels like. I love how different terrains interact with each other. Again, just such a really thoughtful design choice that gives it another layer. I mean, speaking of layers, because you are descending through layers as you're progressing from biome to biome, but just giving that certain ones are more powerful, certain ones interact differently with different enemies. It's very fun and just adds depth to what could be a fairly simple destruction mechanic. Picking up big chunks of terrain is so satisfying. Just ripping shit out of the earth. Again, just makes you feel powerful, makes you feel potent. Also, there's a thing that I think is just a convention of 3D platformers now. And honestly, maybe just owes it all to Mario Sunshine. Is that the first time we saw, hey, there's these little sub-levels, these little obstacle courses that you will enter in every, major, like a main level? I mean, yeah, there's a similar thing in Astrobot, which this has naturally been compared to. Those levels here, those sub-levels within the main levels, where you're just grabbing more bananas and hearing, oh, banana. Not even the last time I say it this episode. Those are super fun. I've enjoyed just stumbling upon them just to see what's inside of it. The use of music, both in the scoring, but also mechanically, that it has an element in here. And then the tuning fork checkpoints, that's what those are, right? Really fun, just in terms of making the world feel more alive and thematically coherent. Sound design's really great. Again, just another element of making the character feel powerful. And from the beginning, too, it's kind of just this power fantasy from the get-go. Just from that initial mine tutorial space, just being able to wreck house right away. And then, of course, the Bonanza mode, which, again, first time I encountered that, I was shocked. The only thing I would say that are a little bit of a hiccup for me, and these have been commented on by others, the frame drops are pretty noticeable and kind of a bummer for what you'd think is like, hey, this is the big new step up in hardware. And, that's what you're encountering when the screen's getting particularly messy. Not a deal breaker, certainly, but a little bit of a bummer. Also the camera, and man, camera design in a 3D game is so difficult. I can't imagine how many more levels of difficulty it adds to, again, have this fully deformable terrain. But there were some times I feel like when I was playing, even early on, where I felt like the camera was getting lost and I couldn't quite tell what I was looking at. Again, not a huge deal, but just minor detractions that I feel obligated to add if I'm giving my take. I've been getting a lot of use out of the Switch 2 Pro controllers. I've put a few hours into this game, and it's my first time really playing it using it for extended stretches to play a game. I really like it. I was not expecting it to be such a step up from the Switch Pro controller on the Switch 1. Vanilla Switch, I guess you could call it, but vanilla's a flavor. Doesn't mean plain. It's an exotic bean. I really, I like the under buttons, the paddles. I think it's really comfortable to hand. The force feedback, again, was very effective. And I just kind of like it aesthetically. Like I like it's got kind of it's not a purely a black colorway of the OG Switch 1 Pro controller. It's got a kind of like, it's got some black and white sort of coexisting, pleasing to look at. But I kind of feel like that's the way to play this one. I haven't really tried it in handheld mode, honestly. Anyway, a friend asked me, should I get a Switch 2 for Donkey Kong Bananza? I think my answer for that is an annoying maybe. If you're planning on getting a Switch 2 anyway, at some point, and you're not particularly cash constrained where you want to wait for a price drop, and who knows when that will come from Nintendo, then yeah, I think it's a good enough game to get a Switch 2. Certainly if you're someone who has a passion for the Donkey Kong franchise or just loves 3D platformers, then I would say, yeah, get a Switch 2. Beyond that, I'm still not sure if it's quite a system seller for gamers in general. I think it's the pretty particular case of I either love these type of games, in which case you probably already have one. You probably already have Donkey Kong Bananza and have played more of it than I have. I'm telling me what a fucking idiot I am for my dumbass takes. But or if you're someone who's like, I'm just gonna get a Switch 2 like eventually anyway, then yeah, I think this is a good enough reason to jump. But beyond that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's enough of a library to justify it beyond that. I also have not investigated how long this game is. It feels like it's going to be fairly beefy, but, I haven't looked at how long to beat. I guess I could do that real quick. Hold on. How long to beat? Is there anyone on Donkey Kong Bananza yet? Okay, preliminary looks like, wow, main plus extra, close to 40 hours. So this is a big boy. Main story, 18 and a half hours. Again, how many people have actually reported? Only 7 people have reported. So, it's maybe a little pretty small sample size. It'll be interesting to see how this holds up versus Mario Odyssey. I've had some friends already give some this might be like a Mario Odyssey for the Switch, which if that's the case, I mean, we're talking about one of the very best Switch games. Or if it's an Astrobot, which it's the defining 3D platformer of this generation, pretty much. Such a marvelous game. I feel like I'll just say this. I'm having the same amount of fun I was having with Astrobot. I'm not quite as charmed yet, but part of that is because I was bringing a lot more pre-existing expectations into a Donkey Kong game than I was into an Astrobot game, having basically just played Astro's Playroom previously. And so it's kind of an unpair. Fuck. Rochelle, you got to help me out here. Change the P into an F. I was trying to say unfair. Just work your magic. Kind of an unfair comparison. I had unfair and comparison. That's where the fair in unfair and the pair in comparison, I conflated them and made the word unpair. Had an apple earlier. That was kind of an unpair. Rochelle, help me out here. Fucking dying. Juice this with some audience applause or something. Make me look good. It's kind of an unfair comparison with Astrobot. I do love Astrobot so much. I mean, I would love for this game to be as good as Astrobot. And maybe we'll get there. But man, I was just saying, I picked this thing up as I don't know, I'll mess around with it a little bit on launch night. Could not stop playing the fucking thing. I'm up past my bedtime. Bleary-eyed in the morning. Because I was playing Donkey Kong Bananza. The big smile on my face like a fucking dipshit. Wrinkles in my brain just smoothing out. Having the time of my fucking life. It rocks. What are the best Donkey Kong games? I do have a lot of fondness just for straight up Donkey Kong. I played the shit out of Donkey Kong. I love that game. It's very much of its time. There's a lot of that design that feels a little bit clunky, but it is a really, really compelling arcade game. Donkey Kong Country is great, obviously. I think a lot of, a lot of people came at me, or came at us, I would guess, say more generally, when we were doing our rare tier list, and we're kind of down a little bit on Donkey Kong Country 3, which I know remember the least of the Donkey Kong Country games. In fact, I don't know if I've ever finished Donkey Kong Country 3, if I'm being completely honest. I probably should. But some people were coming at us and saying hey, actually, y'all were wrong. Donkey Kong Country 3 is maybe the strongest, or is the strongest of the Donkey Kong Country franchise. I believe you. I believe Donkey Kong enthusiasts when you're telling me that. That's just not my memory of it. But then again, you also look at the timing of it. In North America, the Donkey Kong Country 3 for Super Nintendo came out after the release of the Nintendo 64. So it just felt so dated and such a retread at the time that it was kind of hard to evaluate it with clear eyes. I think if I played it now, I might be open to its magic a little bit more. But I really love Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. That game is awesome. I think Retro did an amazing job with that. And then I don't know how much we open it up to spin-offs, but I have so much fondness for Donkey Konga. What a cool design. Anyway, Donkey Kong Bananza. What can I say besides? Oh, banana.
Some days, your brain needs a vacation your body can actually afford. That's where IndaCloud comes in. You juggle the chaos. You answer the emails. You even go outside sometimes. So yeah, you've earned a better way to unwind. Enter IndaCloud. Federally legal THC in the form of gummies, pre-rolls, and flour, designed to turn hanging on into fully chilling. So, if you're 21 or older, head to indacloud.co and use code GETPLAYED to get 25% off your first order plus free shipping. That's indacloud.co, code GETPLAYED, 25% off, free shipping. Just a better vibe in your mailbox. So here's the thing. Look, I got sent some of this stuff, all right? I ate one of the orange soda gummies, okay? Now, look, I'll be honest. I'm a bit of a lightweight, all right? I'm not out here blazing it. I'm not over here, insert euphemism here. I'm not doing any of that, all right? I'm not always doing it. But when I do, I like to just chill out and relax. It made me very silly with my friends, and they all had a nice time enjoying IndaCloud. It sounds too smooth to be legal, right? But it is. IndaCloud's products are Farm Bill compliant, third-party tested, and made for grown-ups who want a buzz without the need to drive 25 minutes to dispensary. And that's just a fact. Dispensaries are 25 minutes from wherever you personally are. That's just how it is. More than 50,000 people already trust them because when it feels this good, it should also feel easy. Whether you're chasing deeper sleep, better focus, or just some peace between your streaming marathons, this is how adults get elevated now. If you're 21 or older, now's your chance to float above the stress because IndaCloud, see what they did, is giving all new customers 25% off their first order plus free shipping. Use code GETPLAYED or click the link in the show notes to claim your discount. That's indacloud.co, IndaCloud.co. Use code GETPLAYED for free shipping plus 25% off your first order. Fill out their quick survey when you order to support this show and make your week way more enjoyable. All thanks to IndaCloud.
All right, let's get into some dev tales of my time working on Fantastic Four and Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer. As you may know if you've listened to previous episodes of Get Played, or honestly episodes of Doughboys, kind of can't fucking shut up about it, I worked in game development in my 20s. It was my first career, the first thing I wanted to do, or rather thought I wanted to do, and so I did that for about a decade. Then I thought I wanted to do writing, so I transitioned to that and was a TV writer for a decade, and then I realized what I really wanted to do was nothing, so I'm a podcaster. But it was my video game career, as it was, really came from a passion for gaming. And it was like my favorite hobby. It was the thing I loved the most. It was that and I guess music, just by virtue of me playing in orchestras and bands as a kid so much. But gaming was number one. And just the idea that I could actually get a job working in the industry, that was not a thing that was purely aspirational, but was in fact tangible for me at a relatively young age. I was just so excited to pursue it. And so quickly became jaded and disillusioned. Probably like, being a jingoistic, anti-communist American going into the, not being drafted, but volunteering for combat duty in Vietnam. And yes, I am comparing myself to a combat veteran for working in video games. In fact, I'd appreciate a thank you for your service every now and then. It's kind of like that, you're like, oh, hey, yeah, let's go to war. I love America. And then you get into shit and you're just immediately like, this is fucking war as hell. What the fuck am I doing here? What the fuck are we doing here? It's sadly kind of how I felt. And part of that was because of the games that I was tasked with working on. And before I really dig in, I am going to tell some stories that involve some people that I worked with. And I'm going to just try to avoid saying names in this for the most part. I weighed how I wanted to handle this, and I just kind of realized I'm in an asymmetrical position to have this platform and be able to just sort of bloviate about my side of all these stories, where even if I feel like I'm not being unfair to somebody or if I'm making somebody look good, I don't know if they want to be shouted out here. So I'm just gonna err on the side of I'm just not gonna say names, except for one guy, Doug. You know who you are. I don't think I actually worked with a Doug. Fuck, did I? As I was preparing this episode and doing the chronology, I realized, and this is just one of those insane things about aging, This was fully 20 years ago. I was generally kind of say like, oh yeah, I work in game design. I worked that, like 10, 15 years ago. No, I started in 2004. Holy fucking shit. From my game design career until now is an infant who can order a beer at a bar. Anyway, Fantastic Four, the Tim Story movie that these games were based off of, released in 2005. So again, 20 years ago, basically 20 years removed from the Fantastic Four first steps. So how I got started in video game design, I got a job. I just kind of applied for it. Didn't really have an in my memory. It's possible I did, but I don't think I did. I think I just kind of cold applied for it. A QA customer support job at Activision. And I worked there for about a year. This was after I dropped out of school. I worked an IT job for a time. Then I got this job that was more related to video gaming, even though it was not as well paying. In fact, it was pretty terribly paying. But I was working in the video game industry. And yeah, I think I've talked about working in QA and customer support before. The QA at Activision at the time was in a basement that was just absolutely clogged with consoles and computers and monitors, and just shoulder to shoulder with the sweatiest, stinkiest fellow gamers. It was an absolute sort of nightmare environment. It felt like a sweatshop. And so you're working down there, and I was working the graveyard shift, and that was another thing that kind of made me say, oh man, why was I doing that? In fact, one of my credits, and I didn't realize this, one of my credits in game development was on a real-time strategy game as a third shift tester. For some reason, they credited those of us who were working the graveyard shift separately for the rest of QA. But that was the sort of thing, because it was basically 24-hour crunching, that they just had bodies working on these builds around the clock, and I was one of them for a time. I didn't last very long in graveyard shift. I actually kind of thrived in customer support, which was answering phones and emails, largely from dismayed parents, but sometimes from frustrated gamers. And it was almost always someone who a game wouldn't run on their PC because they just didn't have a powerful enough video card. That was like 90% of it. But my technique was basically just being more mad at their problem than they were. And it was amazing how much that would calm people down, where they'd be, this is fucking bullshit. I can't believe this fucking game. I paid $50 for this. And I'm just like, I know. What the? It's insane. And you bought it for your son's birthday? That's so unfair. And then all of a sudden they're just like, oh yeah, it's all right. We'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, it's, for whatever reason, that would kind of simmer them down, de-escalate everything. I think I've told some of these stories before, but we had a regular caller who'd call in the customer support, and he'd always ask us if we could physically mail him updates for games. And we had to be like, no, yeah, you can go here, you can download the patch, you can download the latest update, but we can't like send you a CD with a new build. It just doesn't kind of work that way. And I was a nice fella. But he'd be like, oh man, okay, well, I don't have an internet connection because I have a porn addiction. And I can't, there's just too much temptation. So I guess I just can't play the new version. Felt bad for the guy, but, I wonder what became of that. Because how do you avoid having an internet connection now? You can't, right? Can you do anything without an internet connection in 2025? There's something of an option back in the early aughts, but now there's no way to opt out. I mean, how do you do banking even? How do you do anything? How can you get on a plane? Is this guy just, basically a shut-in with no contact with the outside world? Did he become like a Shed Manifesto person? Or is he on broadband again? Is he wired in? Fucking cranking it all day long. I love this. Why did I ever enter recovery? This is the thing I like the most. Sick fuck. He's into some nasty shit too. Sitting there pulling his pud. In a fucking library? There are kids there, man. You're looking at Vor? Pulling yourself off in a public library? Anyway, I also had a time where at the end of each day, we would have a meeting. And the leads on the team would go around and talk to everyone who worked in the call center about all of the things that would happen that day, if there were any trends, if anyone was calling about the same problems, the same games, if there were any particular notable incidents. So the way that would go, they just go around and be like, hey, Mike, anything happen? All right, Juan, anything happen over there? You know, like, how was your day? Just that sort of thing. So you're going around the circle. It goes to everybody that this is my team. This is the team lead. This is my supervisor. He points to me. He says, all right, how about you, cocksucker? This is my boss saying this to me. And I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck to say. Another guy on the team raises his hand and says, no, that was me. It turned out like an angry dad had called the guy a cocksucker on the phone, but the lead thought it was me. But I'm just sitting there being called a cocksucker in a conference room by next up in the chain of command, contemplating an HR complaint. We had fun. It all worked out fine. There was also just a thing that happened on that side of the job where constantly the guy who worked above him, like the lead of the department, would go around and just have like a big stack of like, X-Men Origins Wolverine. I think that was the game. I think that's what it was called. I think it was the same title as the movie. And just be like, hey, anyone want this game? And we'd be like, yeah, all right, I'll take a free game. You know, I'm making $9 an hour in customer support. Why not? I think eventually got it bumped up to like $11.82. And so like I just got stacks of free games. And I remember when there was this guy who used to give me rides, and I would when I was in school, and I just had all these free games from working at Activision. And so like I just one day was like, hey man, thanks so much for giving me a lift. Here you go. And I just handed him like a stack of 4 games. He was like, oh, holy shit. Like, he's like, because it was like I handed a college student $200 basically. But for me, I was just like getting them all the time. Anyway, years later, I meet up with another guy who worked in customer support at Activision. And we're just talking about people, and it was like, hey, whatever happened to, our boss? What happened? It's like, oh, you didn't hear? Yeah, he got fired. He was stealing all those games. This guy was just, it's kind of an awesome thing to do. Very Robin Hood. Just be like lifting inventory from Activision corporate and just handing it out to your staff. Anyway, after working at Activision, I went back to school briefly. This is at UCLA. Then in 2004, my college roommate, who had already graduated and was working in game development at this company, 7 Studios, told me there was a design opening and I should submit for it. So I submitted and I interviewed and passed the design test, and I was hired. I was a math major in college, so I had, computer programming knowledge. Plus I had some short films I'd written, which I could use as samples, and I had some writing samples. So I kind of had like my kind of both buckets of like, I could handle the technical side and I could handle the creative side. And that's, ideally what you're looking for. And it really, I guess in any part of gaming, it's all a creative field, but like particularly in design, I was a junior designer. I believe my starting salary was $35,000 a year, which even in 2004 money, it was not very much. And the hours were pretty punishing, which we'll get into. And I was hired mid-development cycle for the game that would become 2005's Fantastic Four with a number 4. Now, I looked up this game on Moby Games. Yeah, I hadn't read anything about it in many years. Here's the verbatim description taken from Moby Games. This game is a licensee of the 2005 movie Fantastic Four. Unlike many licensed titles, this third-person action game in the vein of the Onimusha or Devil May Cry series only takes the base of its plot from the actual movie, then liberally changes it to make for better gameplay. Very flattering comparisons to Onimusha and Devil May Cry. I'm a defender of the work we were able to do on that game, but I do not think it's in that territory. But that's like certainly what it was aspiring to be. Generally, the game brings in more content for the comic books than the movie, particularly considering the villains that appear. While the movie pretty much only concerned itself with Victor Von Doom, aka Dr. Doom, as its supervillain of choice, I believe in the movie it was Victor Van Dam. And I believe that was the case in the game as well. They did some retconning because Fox was, I guess, concerned that Victor Von Doom sounded too stupid, but Victor Van Dam was okay for some reason, but he could still be Dr. Doom. It's the same reason Galactus became a gas. It was sort of these arbitrary changes to IB, taking away what was interesting about it, to, I guess, make it less weird for mainstream audiences. But in so doing, you just make it like boring and alienate everybody. As Victor Von Doom, aka Dr. Doom, is its supervillain of choice. The game brings in various characters from the comic books as well. The Mole Man, the Puppet Master, or Diablo, to name a few. The gameplay usually consists of walking the heroic title characters around a level and beating up various enemies that cross their path. There are mission objectives, but usually the only way to achieve them leads through the enemies, and as usual, the only way to fail them is to be overwhelmed by the bad guys. Beating enemies yields points, which can be used to upgrade characters with new special moves or unlock various bonus materials. And there's also co-op mode, which it talks about. I ultimately have level design, sound design, and additional dialogue credits on this game. So, but like I said, it's mid-development when I join, and I'm very much just thrown right into it, like right into the fire. And I quickly learn the development lead has a quick fire trigger. I won't say who specifically, I'm certainly not going to say a name, but my second week, Friday of my second week, a guy got pulled into their office, and that designer from my team, from my immediate team, same game, same department, was fired. Now, in the run-up to that, this guy had been, this lead had been asking the other designers, just been kind of checking in with them, I later learned, and being like, hey, how's Wiger doing? Is he, you think he can handle it? And I never got clarity on this, but it was strongly implied that I was hired as this guy's replacement while he still had a job there. And so I basically had a 2-week audition to see whether or not I could handle it. And if so, I could keep the job. Otherwise, I guess I would have been fired. Maybe that guy stays. It was just like fucking grim and ruthless. The studio later did the same thing where they hired 4 designers for 2 slots. And thankfully, they had the good sense, because all of them were good, to be like, you know what, we're just going to create room in the budget to keep all 4 of these guys. That was on a different game. But it was just like, that's a fucking insane way of doing business. And this is my introduction to it. This is my introduction to the industry. So there was also another guy I learned about, because a lot of people got fired there. There was a guy who got fired years before I joined, but it was kind of an infamous story at the studio. I guess he got fired for cause, and then IT was going through his hard drive for his work computer, and he had just like, gigs of porno, but it was all specifically like guys' dicks and balls with like ice cream on it. Like he had a specific like melting ice cream over a nutsack fetish. I had relayed that to a British guy later. He said, sounds like he really got sacked. I was like, that's very clever. So the studio is located in Brentwood, California, which is a very fancy pants neighborhood in LA. It was not a fancy pants company. In fact, they had a tiny headquarters. They were crammed into this too small office space. I remember they had programmers working in a converted closet. That's how like just cramped it was. Eventually, mid-development, in fact, the whole company moves to a larger space in West LA, which was much more of a traditional office space. But for the first few months, we were really, really crammed in there. In this era of development, off-the-shelf solutions for game engines weren't as common, and you also were a lot less likely to encounter robust middleware like, say the Havoc physics engine or SpeedTree or whatever the fuck, you just didn't have as many of those tools, and you didn't have these commonalities where you could kind of go in and immediately get on the saddle because like, in the same way that like if you know Microsoft Excel or Photoshop, you can go to a job where knowledge of those programs is part of the expectation and you know what to do. Here, the studio had a bespoke engine, as most studios did for their projects. Part of the frustration of working in that era of development is that skill transference was not as direct. So like these days, I'm not saying these days modern developers have it easy at all. It's still an extraordinarily difficult and time-consuming job. But just the idea of having, if you know Unreal Engine or you know Unity, it feels like you can kind of have a lot of job opportunities. And in fact, you're likely to be working at a studio that is maybe using one of those or some other major engine where the skills are transferable. But if you're going someplace, and in my case, working for years at the same studio that has its own internal technology, and then all of a sudden you get an opportunity for a job somewhere else, as I did at a couple of studios. Pandemic was one place where I was looking for work, RIP studio that had some great games and then was shut down, I believe, by EA, maybe Activision. Well, let's do fucking publishers who all they do is buy studios and then shut them down. And Infinity Ward was another one, which is responsible for birthing the Call of Duty franchise. And both of those just required design tests that were like, yeah, hey, learn our internal tool and apply it just as a condition for employment. And it's just like, you're working a full-time job. You're talking about something that's going to be a week's worth of work on top of the more than a week's worth of work you're doing in full-time development. Anyway, so the studio had this internally developed engine that was used for its first two games, Legion, the Legend of Excalibur, which was an action RTS hybrid, and Defender, which was a remake of the classic game. And Defender was their 3D Defender was pretty good and may have just been Seven Studios' strongest game overall. I didn't work on either of those games. Those had been published previously. As such, however, though, it was developed for, again, an RTS game, and Defender is a vehicle combat game. It's a shooter. Basically, you're flying over terrain. So it had a lot of limitations that were not necessarily an issue with Fantastic Four's original design, but with the design it turned into, it became a little bit of a stumbling block, and it certainly was an issue for me as a level designer. More on that in a second. And by in a second, I mean right now. The Fantastic Four game had been in development for a few years previously. Shortly before I am hired, in fact, I think part of the reason I'm hired and part of the reason they're staffing up pretty rapidly is because they had the comic license. Seven Studios had the comic license for an F4 game that Activision was going to publish. Then the Fox movie gets greenlit. And now all of a sudden, this Fantastic Four comics game, which, as is my understanding in the original design and some of the original concepts I've seen, was supposed to be a traditional, more side-scrolling beat-em-up, was turned into more of a 3D character action game. And it created just like a lot of weirdness because you had a lot of assets, a lot of story that was created. Some of what I was saying in the Moby Games summary earlier, where it's talking about like there's things from the comics, but there's also things from the movie. Yeah, that's because all the comic stuff was generated for that original concept, and then the movie stuff was grafted on top of it and sort of kludged in there to try to make it work as a tie-in game. Nowadays, I don't think they'd overthink it to that degree. I think there's this a little bit more of a sophistication in terms of IP and a little bit more respect for the audience. And after the Rocksteady Batman games and the Sony Spider-Man games, where it's like, well, it doesn't have to be a direct tie-in to the movie. Like, I feel like if they came up with just a random Fantastic Four game now, maybe they are, that had no real connection, did not have the likenesses to the actors in the movies, in the movie, the new movie, the MCU movie, no one would give a fuck. They'd just be like excited to play a Fantastic Four game. But back then they were like, we're trying to make it pretty one-to-one. And I talked about the engine. It made more sense for the original design, but not for the redesign because it was pretty limited in terms of what it could do for verticality. And, again, just trying to make a modern meaning the aught sense, 3D game without much vertical movement or with just having to fake that. It felt pretty unnatural, and it just all had a little bit of a jank to it. So we had to like work around that. It was also integrating the movie lore, and the story was a little bit clunky. They retconned the Ultimate Fantastic Four comics lore to correspond to the Fox movie with Victor Van Dam and Gas Lactus, and they rebuilt the character models, as I mentioned, to be likenesses for the actors in the movies. There was a lot of it's just like a tough for the art department to try to rejigger all that on the fly, make the existing animations work with different character proportions. There were just challenges there. So for this internal engine, this bespoke engine that we use for this game, we had an internally developed tool called Uber Tool, which I guess describing the workplace, if anyone's ever worked with CAD or if anyone's ever worked with like 3D Studio Max or Maya, it's kind of that sort of UX, you know? You've got like an environment where you can do level layout, and then you've separately got windows where you can do scripting, and that's how you can handle flow of control, how you can handle like the events that are happening throughout the course of the game, when cutscenes are triggered, where enemies spawn, and so forth. Because it's an internally developed tool, with the GUI, and it's kind of crude because, the programmers are making it, but they're just trying to make it to be kind of bare bones functional. They're not trying to give it all the bells and whistles of something that's like, again, a dedicated product like Unreal Engine. It just was a very functional tool, but just like had a very high learning curve and no real manual. Certainly, no YouTube tutorials to draw upon. It was just kind of like learning, again, trying to learn Photoshop or 3D Studio Max, and just by messing around, just by trial and error, just by asking like the guy next to you, hey, how do you do this? And so, that was part of that 2-week trial period, was just seeing like if I could get up to speed and learn how to use this thing. Thankfully, I was able to figure it out and become quite fluent with it. But again, it was a thing that was really a skill that was really only useful in that particular job. As a video editor later in my career, it was working at Funny or Die. I knew Final Cut, and then at a certain point they switched internally to Adobe Premiere, and so that was kind of a lateral thing. And I because I knew Final Cut and I also knew Adobe After Effects, I was able to transfer some of those skills. So I guess there is like just in terms of like making 3D levels and knowing how to script in Lua or Python or whatever the fuck. Like there was stuff that was indirectly transferable, but it was certainly there would not be any other development environment where you'd ever use Uber Tool, which is what we used every day. I did enjoy the parts of the job that were working with environment artists, because again, as a level designer, that was my primary role. That's mostly what I was doing, figuring out how the level was laid out and figuring out what happened within it. And a lot of that was working with an environment artist. A lot of then the guys there were all so talented. The people there were all super talented. And it was really cool the way how you'd kind of just build a box and then just see them figure out the art that would layer on top of that, and it would make it feel, lived in and just aesthetically pleasing. Combat was less my focus in my role, but I would set up combat encounters. I mean, that's just part of designing a level. Like you go into this space, and again, these are the waves that happen. The character movesets I thought were pretty good from a combat standpoint. Again, this is not stuff that I was really responsible for, but it was stuff that I thought worked well in the game. The way I think Ray Richards, Mr. Fantastic, played in particular, he had this kind of like dulcim stretching mechanic, but it also had like a little bit more of a floatiness to it, just using the flexibility of him. And I thought the moves, I thought the way he played was very visually satisfying. And he also had like a hacking mini game, which I had some. I put some work into helping to design and implement, and that was basically just like Pipe Dream. But that was kind of fun. I don't know. I mean, it's just like kind of one of those things you just put it in because, like, I guess this should have a hacking mini game. I don't know. That's part of how you use like the smartest man in the world, is that you just give him something that I guess lets you play that side of it, even though sometimes shit's just in a game just to give you something to do, And that's kind of what that felt like. But I did think it worked in context. Ben Grimm, the Thing, I thought also played pretty fun. He did feel powerful, and he was really, could really wreck house. I really liked, from a design standpoint, combat design standpoint, that you could grab enemies and throw them off of ledges. I always felt that was very satisfying as a way to kill them. Johnny Storm and Sue Storm, I think we were maybe a little less successful with. Johnny Storm, again, part of the limitation of the engine, we didn't really have a way for him to fly. He was just basically hovering. And so it was just a little bit less satisfying. You kind of want the sense of flight. You want to be able to have 3D movement, but the engine wasn't really capable of that, and or even if we could find a way to fake it, it just would have broken a lot of the way the levels were designed. And just like it's less of an issue if it's a side-scrolling beat 'em up, because you don't feel that as much. But if you're dealing with a fully 3D environment, it was part of the issue with rebuilding the plane in flight. And Sue Storm, it was just like the game just didn't really have a stealth system at all. And so you couldn't really, you got to use kind of more of her force powers, her telekinesis and what have you. But we didn't really have a satisfying invisibility mechanic. You could go invisible, but it never really felt like the power fantasy of being that character. I did really like about the job of mentioning collaborating with artists and programmers. It was just always cool to just be like, if you could ask something, you could ask a programmer something, and just for them to like, oh yeah, I could do that. You know, because like for our camera system, specifically for cinematics, we were kind of restricted in terms of what you could do with camera movement. And so I was just like, hey, can we make it so you could do like a dolly? You know, you could move the camera forward. You could roll the camera so you could do like a Dutch angle. You know, like just like simple things like that, like within the context of a cutscene. And they're just like, yeah, I could do that. Like implemented in a day, and all of a sudden we had these new cinematic tools that we could use for cutscenes. So it was always satisfying when you had that sort of process of just like checking in with somebody, and they're like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, why not? Conversely, like also sometimes you'd run into things you wouldn't know were going to be impossible. So like I had one of the boss fights I worked on had Puppet Master in it, but Puppet Master was not a character who could animate. It was just a static model. And so basically he was just present there, kind of standing in the background saying quips. And I was kind of like, I don't know, it might be cool if he could like run around, like, and, you know, like find, like you're battling this main boss, right? And it's like Puppet Master is puppeting him. So like, but like you're fighting the main boss, but he's also a distraction. He could like run over here and taunt you and like throw something at you and then run over here, like do something like that. And I pitched this to the artists. They were the lead character artist, and he was just like basically at a meltdown of just like, it'd take a week just to like rig this guy, like just to make it so he could animate. Like, it's just like, this would be so much work. There's like, all right, well, that kind of got smothered in the crib. My frustration with the job, beyond the way the game was going, in terms of its design kind of getting unmoored from its original approach, and the horrible hours, which I'll talk about more in a little bit, and were not unique to my experience in gaming, was I don't know. I think I am a good writer, and I didn't get much opportunity to write anything. The actual writing process, so much of that involved screenwriters that Fox and Activision had vetted. And they did a good job, but they really were not people who were internal, who were having a lot of contact with the team, and could iterate as rapidly as we were progressing, as we were developing. So, you might change something in a level, and like all of a sudden we need new dialogue here. And it's not a kind of thing of like, if you have a narrative designer in house or you have a writer in house, it's someone who can on the fly be making these adjustments, or someone, again, you can be directly collaborating with. It was just not really a possibility. It was like emails sent into the void, and then weeks later getting a new draft of a script. I did end up with an additional design credit, or additional writing credit, as I mentioned above, because I did get some dialogue in there by hook or by crook, as did a lot of the other designers. But yeah, that was a little bit of an annoyance. I also have a sound design credit, which I don't know if I really even deserved, but happy to take it. But a lot of what I was just doing was just implementing sound effects. I didn't generate the sound effects. These were being pulled from a library, and then I was just timing them with the animation. And so it was more just implementing things. It really didn't have much to do with like defining the sonic character of the game. Poof, sonic character of the game. Now we're talking. Get Big the Cat in there. It was a multi-platform game, and developing for GameCube specifically was a challenge because it had so much less disk space. So we had PlayStation 2 Xbox, Windows, and GameCube were our SKUs. And yeah, the GameCube, I mean, just again, from an audio standpoint, part of my job there was to compress audio, sometimes compress the shit out of it, just so we could fit more assets onto the GameCube disc. I talked about camera earlier with Donkey Kong. The designing the camera is just like such a nightmare. Not something, again, I had much influence from a design standpoint. And a lot of that was like on the programming side, but it was a thing you always had to be conscious of. And it's sometimes why, and I feel like this is specifically the case with a lot of games from that era, where some of the 3D spaces, some of the levels feel unnatural. Like they just like some spaces are too wide, out of proportion. Why is this door frame like 15 feet tall? You know what I mean? It's like all shit. It's just everything feels a little bit skewed. And a lot of that was just to our efforts to just accommodate the camera. And again, I don't think that was something that was unique to what we were doing at Seven Studios. I mentioned the cutscenes and the way we did them, kind of an internal self-own. And this was partly in response to Activision wanting the game to feel, again, more movie-like. The engineering team developed a vignette system, which allowed for more, ornate animations, animated sequences to be streamed from the disc. So you could all of a sudden have not just like what I was describing earlier, where it's just like, a handful of camera moves and some, you've just got guys standing there in idle animations while voiceover is playing and we're not seeing that their lips aren't moving, but just actually have like a little bit more of like a dynamic sequence where, for instance, one of them was The Thing, Ben Grimm waking up in the hospital bed and realizing he's the Thing for the first time. And it's like a whole, like he's having some real reactions, and it was well animated, but it's the kind of thing where it's like just doing that, creating that 30-second animation, which looks really cool, but any gamer is going to want to watch once and then skip on all subsequent playthroughs. That in of itself consumed like a week of an animator's time. And we only had so many animators, and that whole time they were spent making vignettes took away making it in essence like bespoke, fully contained movies within the game engine, took away from time spent on other tasks, like refining character movement and combat and so forth, and like giving enemies cool shit to do. But that's also the kind of thing where like you're working with a publisher, and in that era, a lot of the executives at the publisher don't really understand gaming, but they know what a movie is. So they're seeing a cool looking cutscene and they're like, nah, we want more of those. And so all of a sudden, part of why I called it a cell phone is because it was this technology that was created, and it made us let us create things that looked really cool in 2004, 2005 gaming terms and cinematic, but it just created a ton more work that took away from the overall quality of the game. As for some of the levels I worked on, I mentioned things like hallway width and door size. A lot of those things came from guidelines within the GDD, or General Design Document, which is just kind of like a Bible, if you will, of how the game is supposed to work. I'm not sure if all developers use them, but certainly when I was working in development, that was kind of a standard expectation. I know some other developers I've heard like to work more in shorthand and a little bit less formally, but this was all comprehensively what was going to happen in the game, and all the guidelines were sort of pretty explicitly laid out. So I worked on some levels, but anyway, that was all just said to sort of say there were some general guidelines, but beyond that, we were kind of just given some freedom in terms of, hey, here's what happens in this level story-wise, but you kind of figure it out. And so for some of these levels, there were a few I crafted from scratch. There were others that I took over that had been worked on to various degrees, and I took ownership of as kind of overseeing. In fact, that just in general, the way it worked is that all the level designers kind of like took different pieces of the game. And one thing I did really like about the way it was structured internally is that it wasn't like we were assigned a separate biome. It's like, hey, you take care of this, like all these levels that take place in, Tikal, and you take care of all these levels that take place in space. It was like everyone had a piece of each individual thing. So we were all kind of invested in it holistically and made it feel a little bit more cohesive. So that was fun. But yeah, I worked on a couple of hospital levels from the early game. I worked on the very first level of the game, which was kind of a non-combat thing, a more cinematic approach that people really liked. And as such, they had me do another level like that I just knew was not fucking working. but it was just like, well, they liked this one level where it was just like you were, it was Ben Grimm pre-transformation in space, where he's going to be exposed to cosmic rays. And it was just like him in a spacesuit and kind of this sort of claustrophobic sort of a space horror feel to it. And I guess it was effective, and it was also kind of a tutorial level. But then when you revisited a non-combat thing in a game that was, again owes its origins to being a beat 'em up later on into the game, which was a sequence which was pulled from the movie where they rescue some civilians from a crashed fire truck or something like that. I had to oversee this level, and like, I never felt like it was fucking working. I never thought like it was a good idea. I certainly don't think I did a good idea trying to make it playable, but you're just trying to make the best out of it. But yeah, it was very much like, I mean, like I was trying to think of a thing other than to say than polishing a turd. But there you go. Hey, we want this level to be a turd. All right, well, I mean, it's gonna probably be bad. It's probably gonna like smell bad, and like, I'm gonna look at it, and you're gonna be like, why is this here? Why am I looking at this thing? I don't like it. I guess I'll make it shiny. Maybe that'll help. Put like coat of varnish on it. I did get to work on some boss fights I liked. I had the Puppet Master boss fight I mentioned, which in its original design was supposed to be like a golem that could roll into a ball. That was what I wanted to do. And then eventually, the animators were like, I don't think that's really possible. So we rejiggered it into something else. But it was still, like a monster. It became, I believe, a monster that's subdivided into smaller monsters. And that's like a kind of a boss fight convention I always enjoyed. So that was fun to oversee that. And then I worked on the Mole Man / Moloid King boss fight, which was this. I don't think there is Moloid King. I think that's something we invented. In fact, it's maybe something I fucking named. I don't know. Maybe Moloid King is canon in the comics, and I'm Mandela affecting it. But he was like the mole man who lives underground. In the final part of that, the final of his 4 levels. His chunk of the game, you battle him again, like the Puppet Master, a static character who can't animate but could just say quips, who was up there, and he wasn't who you were actually fighting. Who you were fighting was this gigantic monster who emerged from the street. I think it was a little bit more style over substance, but it was, I think, pretty cool feeling. It was definitely akin to, not as good as, obviously, but like kind of like more of a God of War boss fight where it's a little bit more, you can't battle them in a conventional way. You're not using conventional combat techniques. You're more just trying to dodge a series of attacks and then end up with a context sensitive action. In this case, it was using Sue Storm's force bubble power. I'm sure the Fantastic Four nerds are so mad that I don't know the actual names of these things. I'm sorry. I should. Worked on these games for years. Like the Moloid King would throw his hand down. Oh, I did get in trouble for killing a cop in this box fight. I had a cut scene where the fucking the Moloid King knocked on a building, like knocked some rubble from a building, and it fell on a cop and crushed him because there was already an existing animation of like a civilian cowering, and so I just put it onto the cop, and it looked like he fucking was killed by like falling rubble. I got a talking to about killing police officers in a game for children. Anyway, I thought it was earned by the narrative. But anyway, yeah, like the Moloid King would throw his hand into the street, and while it was stuck there, you could run over his Sue Storm and use your force bubble powers to anchor it in place. Then he would have one hand locked down. He'd get the other hand down. You'd lock that one into place, and then you could access his face and fucking beat him up a little bit. So, it's pretty basic, but it was pretty satisfying. And that boss fight got to be on the cover of Game Fan magazine, which was still like, that's kind of a cool thing. That's a level I worked on. Wasn't the only one who worked on it, but I took some ownership of it. There was also a level with the Human Torch, who again, like the way he played was just a little bit awkward, but I thought his combat was pretty fun. He felt pretty, fast and kinetic, and he could light things on fire. That was satisfying. There was a level where he would go through, and there were a bunch of Doom bots, which are like, Dr. Doom's replicas that were all powered down. And so you're going through, I think it was a museum, maybe it was the space station. Anyway, you reach a certain point where you have to pull an alarm to open or you have to turn on the power. I think it's turning on the power. Fuck, man. Why am I telling this anecdote I am profoundly unclear on? The point is you had to flip a switch, and the switch opened a door you need to get through, but as a result powered up all the powered off Doombots. And there was a cinematic in there, and I took over the level. There was like a cutscene of like, oh, watching all the Doombots power up, because I thought it was more satisfying to just have that happen in gameplay, where you'd flip the switch, you'd turn around, you'd head back and realize, holy shit, all these Doombots that were powered off are now powered on, and I'm fighting them. They're spawning one by one. I thought that was just more interesting for that to be emergent. But I was told that they wanted the cinematics and to put them back in. So, you win some, you lose some. But I always like the approach just in terms of game design of like having things happen in gameplay and not interrupting gameplay with movies, which again goes back to what I was talking about with the cinematics and the vignette system. And a lot of that again came from Activision, who was the publisher. Part of development when you're working with, I guess, a publisher of any size is you have milestones. Basically every month you have a deliverable, and every quarter you have like a major one of those where they want to see a chunk of the game at a certain stage of development. And that's how they decide if you're going to get paid for the next month or the next quarter. And so that basically you could always count on horrific crunch at the end of each month, just trying to achieve this overly ambitious deliverable. One thing that came from Activision, on top of just the relentless, barrage of milestones that you had to hit, was you got a lot of creative involvement from people or creative notes from people who maybe were less familiar with gaming or just had like a different idea of how things should work. And again, weren't in the trenches with the development. So I don't know if everyone knows the door problem of game design. This is a famous blog on Game Developer from Liz England. I've got a little bit of this here. I like to describe my job in terms, I'm just reading from it here. I like to describe my job in terms of the door problem. Premise, you are making a game. Are there doors in the game? Can the player open them? Can the player open every door in the game? Or are some doors for decoration? How does the player know the difference? Are doors you can open green and ones you can't red? Is there trash piled up in front of doors you can't use? Did you just remove all the doorknobs and call it a day? Can doors be locked and unlocked? What tells a player a door is locked and will open as opposed to a door they will never open? Etc., etc. And it keeps going. It's basically like anytime you bring up a new idea, it just presents so many possibilities that you have to work through and so many contingencies that you have to account for. So I'll give one example. An Activision executive really liked the idea of the Thing, the big rock monster, grabbing a parking meter and swinging it as a baseball bat. Now, I agree. In theory, that sounds fun. That sounds like cool power fantasy. That sounds like you're being, this big, buff, burly superhero. But again, just work through the door problem with that concept. Is every parking meter a baseball bat? If so, you think of a street and you never see one parking meter, right? You'll see a line of them. So now you just have a bunch of baseball bats that are available in the environment. Now the user is incentivized to, instead of using the Thing's moveset to just grab as many parking meters as possible, is use them as baseball bats. Or, one thing you could do is say hey, these baseball bats are not particularly powerful. These parking meter baseball bats are not particularly powerful. But then that stops feeling like you're using a parking meter that as a weapon. And again, that kind of undermines the power fantasy of it. It just feels less fun. So then you have maybe some parking meters you can use as baseball bats, but others you can't, to make sure they're not overpowered or too available in the environment. But then that becomes a thing of how do we distinguish it? Do we make, green parking meters are ones you can swing and gray parking meters are ones you can't? Ultimately, what they landed on was, I think it was the best of the options, which was just you could break a parking meter and there was a percentage chance that it would spawn a swingable parking meter baseball bat. Because, again, if you make them too weak or too, breakable, then it stops being fun. So you want them to have some heft. You want them to have some potency. But if you can't have too many of them, because then they become OP. So that became that. But like, to me, that also just kind of felt unsatisfying, because it's like, wait, why now? What is the justification why some of them spawn swingable baseball bats and other ones don't? You know what I mean? It's like, but these are the sort of things that happen when you just when someone just has like an idea. And again, that's just kind of the frustration of working with a publisher who has a heavy hand in what you're doing. In mid 2004, The Incredibles releases, which we're all just like, we are fucked. There's no way the Fantastic Four movie is going to be as good as The Incredibles. I remember seeing that with the development team in the theater, just like, oh man, I mean, that was great, but I read the script for the movie that's coming out with the Fantastic Four for the game we're working on. They're fighting a fucking gas. There's like a space nebula that's the big bad guy. As we got towards the finish line, because we had to deliver this game, this is the era where physical release is basically the only game in town. So you have to lock the game. It has to go gold quite a bit earlier to allow for production time. So we're really ramping up towards the back end of 2004 and into early 2005. I think we had to lock in May, and the game ships in June. Crunch just became unrelenting. I mean, just like the one example I will tell people sometimes, just to give you a taste of how it was. I worked 19 straight days. I lopped a day off. One of those days was Easter Sunday. Monday through Sunday, just going in relentlessly. I'd say most weeks I work 6-day weeks, and I would say 60 hours was kind of the floor of where we were. In fact, I remember being told in a team-wide meeting, all departments, that we were going to 60-hour weeks, and us feeling like they were reducing our hours. In my memory, people applauded, because it was just like, oh man, you're giving us a break. Also, this is just, again, just like it was a crazy environment to be tossed into. Pretty early on, we were working pretty heavy hours, and one of the leads was talking about just pacing yourselves and just being like, if you feel like you can get your work done, you can go home. But it was not like a, hey, crunch is mandatory, but kind of like tacitly implied that like it'd be great if you could crunch, but take time for yourself if you want. But don't you fuck me. Don't you fuck me. Damn, dude. It's a lot for a 23-year-old guy straight out of school to hear at his first real job. I don't know if people remember EA Spouse at this era, but this was a famous blogger who just talked about being the partner of someone who worked in development, in this case at EA, and just how rarely they got to spend time with their partner, and how stressful it was, and just like how onerous working in game development was. I actually met EA Spouse working that job. One of the developers I shared an office with, one day, like a couple of friends came to visit. It was a guy who worked at EA and his wife. And afterwards, he was like, that was EA Spouse. I was like, that's fucking crazy. But yeah, that was just sort of the thing of just like, I remember reading that blog and being like, yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. As we got towards the finish line, I will say, having worked in QA, seeing QA from the other side as a developer, and this happened on subsequent games I worked on as well, QA is so absolutely essential and undervalued. It's just like there's no way you could possibly make a game at all without the heroic work of testers playing the shit out of your game and finding things that you couldn't have found. From a bug standpoint, from a balance standpoint, it's just so absolutely essential. And, it's gained new... I already had more respect for QA after working that job and seeing how taxing it was. But then just see how tangibly they were improving the game, how much extraordinarily useful, bug chasing... Bug chasing? Should I say bug chasing? Yeah, bug chasing. and playtesting they were doing. Just so much respect for them. Also, towards the end, as we're getting towards shipping, Stan Lee came to visit our studio, and it was a whole photo op thing where Stan Lee was there. And we're all kind of like, oh, this is cool. And Stan Lee came in and played the Fantastic Four with one of my fellow designers. They played co-op mode together. Honestly, what I remember is I found Stan Lee profoundly annoying. He just came in and just talked an unbroken monologue until he left. Like, he was, the Fantastic Four game. Here we are, invented the Fantastic Four back in 1963. It was, I had the Sue Storm was a visible woman. Like, just like that, just word salad talking about Marvel properties nonstop. Like, not even like leaving any space for anyone to say anything. And also, in the process of playing the game, he somehow took the thing out of Collision and just ended up in a gray void. So he somehow broke the fucking game. Not his fault, obviously, but also when the game shipped, I had an uncle who, it couldn't have been his kid, my cousin, because he's too old. But I think for like a friend's kid, he was like, hey, can I get a copy of the game? Just as a gift. I was like, yeah, sure. And so I got a copy. We got free copies of the game. We got a bunch of free copies of the game when it shipped. And so I just left one out there at the front desk with a Sharpie, and I had the whole team sign it. And I sent to my uncle, hey, here you go. I got everyone to sign or whatever. My uncle's like, I can't give this to him. He fucking sold it on eBay. Now, I don't know how much over MSRP it's getting for the John Hancocks of a bunch of random developers for a licensed game. I don't know who wants that, but he thought it was a hot property and made some coin off of it. The game released on June 28, 2005, I think to middling to semi-positive reviews. I thought it was okay. And it sold pretty well from my understanding. The movie did okay. And as a shipping bonus, everyone on the team got a $50 Best Buy gift card. Makes it all worth it. I bought a vacuum. I will say, whatever the quality of the game itself, there were so many incredibly talented people who worked on it. Just absolutely phenomenal artists, programmers, and designers. And this is where I wish I could shout out names, but I'm just abiding by my own rule. But, I like the guy I shared an office with, worked on Command and Conquer and Red Alert. A lot of the team did. It's like, these fucking huge games. Vampire the Masquerade. A lot of the development team worked on that. I saw someone who worked not on this game, but worked on another game, and I peripherally interacted with them, don't really know them, but I saw them in recent years accept an award at the Game Awards because they worked on a huge game. It's like, what I've kind of learned from working on bad video games and on a number of bad TV shows is there is talent absolutely everywhere. It is sometimes just not allowed to flourish for systemic reasons. I genuinely think if that team had been given a lot more creative leeway and a little bit of a less restrictive schedule in terms of this has to ship by the time the movie comes out, we could have made an awesome Fantastic Four game. But unfortunately, that was just not the circumstance of that game's development. I also worked on Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, which I have less to say about. I mean, a lot of that would be rehashing what I talked about with F4. In between those two games, I worked on Pirates of the Caribbean: The Legend of Jack Sparrow, where he's credited as a lead level designer. I won't talk about that game. Dev Men Tell No Tales. Is that anything? Fucking trying here. But that is the game where I went to the neighboring Albertsons, got fried chicken as a snack. Fat fuck that I am, as an afternoon snack. I got a 4-piece fried chicken. Came back to the office. The design lead had called everyone into the conference room. Like I'm basically getting the elevator and I'm being ushered into a conference room. And so naturally I sit down there. I start taking out fried chicken and I start eating it. And in a very grim voice, the design lead is telling us that he had to fire somebody. And, he was a valuable member of the team, but he just was no longer fitting in or whatever, just saying that sort of stuff. Meanwhile, I'm just taking big bites like a drumstick. And one of the other designers goes, "There goes Wiger, chomping on chicken." dude's got to have his chicken. Me hearing about some guy having his life completely upended and the team grappling with morale because we've lost one of our own. There I am stuffing my fat fucking face. Fantasy IV Rise of the Silver Surfer, published by 2K, much less ambitious, isometric beat-em-up focused design. I thought smartly it just had, did like lower aspirations, but ultimately it was, unfortunately, a little bit of a less successful game. It invited comparisons to Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which was not as robust as, and not as ambitious as, but as such, just by being so similar, I think everyone was just like, well, this is like a pale imitation of that, which again, wasn't the intention, but yeah, that's what the reception was. It was a smaller development team. It was a shorter development cycle. It was also the last gen version of the game for PS2 and Wii. A separate developer built the Xbox 360/PS3 versions because this was an era where the horsepower was so vastly different between generations. I just have less to say about this game. I think because it was at this point like the third or fourth game I've worked on, it just is a little bit less forward in my memory. And also just by nature of it being a pretty straightforward design and having, again, more of a plan from the get-go that was just kind of stuck all the way through. It was kind of smooth sailing. The design lead on that team, again, where I wish I was going to shout out some names, was absolutely great and just really good at respecting everyone's work-life balance. So it was a much more manageable project, but as such, just kind of a smaller slider game. Contemporaneous with all this, I am taking classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, Comedy Theater here in LA. And while I'm working on the video game Fantastic Four, I auditioned for and am placed on one of the house improv teams at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, a team that would become known as Last Day of School. Also on that team, someone you may know named Heather Anne Campbell. I was also in a sketch group around this era, A Kiss from Daddy, which was the Upright Citizens Brigade. And I made this video. This is while I was working towards the back end of my time in development. I was able to finagle, and thanks partly to the incredible support from the people I worked with from my employers. Again, yeah, crunching was a reality of gaming, but I think most of the people I worked with were great, and most of the leads I worked with, most of the producers I worked with were so kind, and when I made it clear that I wanted to pursue something else as I was still working in games and still needed the income from it, so accommodating to allowing me to take time off. Eventually was able to go half time, which again is like basically where else in development would you be allowed to do that? So I was in a sketch group, A Kiss from Daddy, and we had this video that I wrote called Mobster Long Piss. And basically what it was that a couple of gangsters, mobsters, whack a guy, and then one of them goes to piss on the corpse, but then it's one of those pisses where he can't stop pissing, and then just like, stars wheel overhead, and he just keeps pissing forever, and there's eventually like a fucking like Tales from the Crypt ending. You get it. But I had this video. I was like, well, if someone's getting pissed on, it will be me. I'm not gonna write this video, make this video, and have someone else have to be pissed on. I'll be the guy who gets pissed on. So I get shot. So my role in this video is just basically get shot in the back of the head. My buddies Mike Cassidy and Paul Rust, who y'all may know, may be familiar with. I mean, you definitely know who these guys are. And they're in that video with me. And so Paul Rust is the guy pissing. And the best fake piss we got was apple juice. That looked best on camera. So he's just squeezing apple juice out of a water bottle like onto me for like, 12 takes. And the whole thing is like he can't stop pissing. So it just keeps like I'm just getting absolutely drenched in piss/apple juice. This is on a day where I'm supposed to go into the office. So we're shooting this in the morning. Probably should have shot it at night, honestly. It's a guy being whacked, but just like whatever. That was when we were available to shoot. We shot it in the morning. I'm getting pissed on. As originally scheduled, I would have had time to shower. It ends up wrapping late. I have to go straight to work. So I'm just at work. I change my clothes, but I'm soaked, like just still sticky all over. And I just smell like fucking apple juice. And I just have to be like, yeah, I don't know. We did a video where I got pissed on. What do you want from me? The rest of my time in development was, as I mentioned, I was kind of pivoting away from it, kind of half in, half out. My mental state was declining. I worked on, I mentioned before, Sopranos Road to Respect, but that was very briefly, and I just have an additional design credit on that. Also, all the games after Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, my credits were just additional design. Because again, I was kind of like half in, half out. Wasn't fully committed. I worked on a Six Flags Fun Park, which was just kind of like a Wii sort of, I think they did a good job with it, but it's kind of a Wii shovelware minigame sort of collection. Space Camp was a similar sort of thing. At a certain point, the studio ran out of money, and we had no parking. So as part of that, they were like the building like took away everyone's parking privileges, no AC and no paychecks. So this was several projects later, but we were working for months for like basically unpaid. I mean, we should have just walked away, but I think you're working in the video game industry. You're so fucking beaten down. You're just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, this is just one more indignity. Who gives a shit? With no parking, no AC, no paychecks for months on end. Part of that was because of a lawsuit involving an internally developed game, which I believe was called Scratch, which Activision believed infringed on another game that they were developing. These were both like games where you played as a DJ that involved a peripheral, like Guitar Hero. The outcome of that was that Activision ended up just acquiring 7 studios to squash this sort of legal action from whatever side it was coming from on April 6, 2009. And turn that game or merge that with their Activision's other concept they were working on into DJ Hero. And I never checked what actually got into the game, but I did come up with some of the achievements for DJ Hero. That was like the very last thing I basically did in game development. Not long after this acquisition, I was told very nicely, again, by people who are very supportive, that I'd need to come in, I'd need to just be a full-time worker again if I want to continue to work for this studio. And I just kind of at this point was like, you know what, I think this probably mutually it's best for me to pursue something else. And had a very nice departure from my time in 7 Studios and my time in game development, and transitioned to comedy writing, first for the internet at The Onion and Funny or Die, and then later for TV. Later that year in 2009, again, this is after I left, and this may have been partly why I was given this talking to. Activision laid off half the company. So again, I think if I hadn't voluntarily walked away, I probably would have gotten the knife at any point in 2009. And then they closed the studio for good in 2011, because that's what publishers do. They buy studios and they fucking close them. I get melancholy when I think about my time in game development, partly because I never worked on any game I would have wanted to play. And like I mentioned, I don't feel like I ever put my full ass into it. But I also feel like there were things I could have done. Like I read about like how Shovel Knight came together, and my understanding of it largely from reading Jason Schreier's book is that there were a lot of people who like were working on games they hated. I don't know if they're exactly analogous to the games I was working on, where you're trying to make the best of it, but it's that, you didn't get into this industry to make games based off of IP, to make licensed tie-ins that are glorified toys that are going to coast off of the success of a movie or TV show or a brand. But those are a lot of the game jobs that exist. But then the Shovel Knight team was just like, fuck it, we're going to make our own thing. And they went fully indie, and they made a indie game passion project and went into business for themselves. And, God bless. I find that shit so cool and so inspiring. And it's the kind of thing, like if I look back at my life and what I would have done differently if I really wanted to pursue game design, I do kind of wish I'd figured out like, hey, how to get my own vision made, whether that was within the studio system or whether that was independently. However, as I mentioned, I met and worked with a lot of extremely talented and kind people. And as I mentioned, some of whom have gone on to amazing success, a lot of whom have gone on to amazing success. Also, again, as I'm at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, I had a one-man show. I fucking know. I know. You've been listening to this. You're still clicked on this. Imagine me doing this on stage. I had a one-man show, but so many of the people from the development team came out and supported me, and I'll always be so grateful for that. Some of them came and saw it multiple times. So again, just working with incredibly kind people. It was also just really cool to work with a bunch of fucking gamers, as someone who like loved games, and found a few people in high school and college that I could connect with, but never like a community this big. And it's just like everyone there. Like I remember working in game development, games like God of War and World of Warcraft, Mario Kart DS, Half-Life 2 came out. It was just so cool to be in that environment, to be able to talk with people who like really had strong opinions and also really knew what the fuck they were talking about, and sometimes could put things in better, smarter language than I use on this podcast when talking about game design or art or the tech side of it. And I do miss that about the industry. I'd like to say it all worked out for the best. I'm not sure. That's like the easy thing to say, but it's kind of the only rational thing to do. You just got to kind of accept the way things played out, because that's how life works. I will say I got some nice perspective from a programmer who is, 20 years older than me, maybe retired now, who before working in game development worked on bank software for many years. And he was basically like, look, was well paid, but you never felt like you made anything, you know? And there's something really satisfying. It doesn't even matter if it's good or bad about just ending up with a tangible product at the end of something. That like I worked on this thing and it's done and it's out there and I made it. You know what I mean? I collaborated with this team to come together and build this work of creativity. I imagine it's like if you work construction, you know, maybe it may not be your dream to be hanging drywall at a Taco Bell franchise, but you know, you build this new Taco Bell and you're like, hey, I built that Taco Bell. And I guess that's kind of how I feel about working on the Fantastic Four games. It also taught me to be less precious about creative things you can't control. Because again, I can do my job up to a point, then it's out of my hands. Can polish the hell out of this turd, but fundamentally, you know, there's your log of shit on a plate. Incidentally, I actually am working a writing job right now, which I'll be annoyingly cagey about, but yeah, I wasn't planning on getting back into TV writing, but it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. And thinking back on Crunch, you know, because I have Doughboys get played and get animated, now my days are, again, like they were in the first half decade of Doughboys and the first couple of years of Played, whereas in a writer's room all day and then went straight to record podcasts at night. And I'll basically be out of the house for 12 hours most days. I'm actually recording this in my home office at 9 p.m. on a Friday. And I'm just kind of numb to that because it still feels like nothing compared to crunching in game development. And I feel like if I had any failing in this episode beyond it sucking, I feel like I just really didn't hammer home what it was like to just never get a break, to just constantly be working, how fucking bad crunching was and how much it sucked and how much it made me hate something I was passionate for. I remember this moment where a guy, a developer on a different team who I kind of knew, but was good friends with someone I shared an office with, came in one day and was just kind of like, well, that's it, I'm getting out of games. And we're like, oh, kind of like, why? He's like, yeah, I'm going to go work for my dad's real estate firm. And he's a talented guy, young guy, but just got burned out so fucking quick, just couldn't handle the hours. I think the industry's gotten better in that regard, but it just fucking churned people into nubs. I certainly probably would have spent more time in it if I could have handled the time I was forced to spend in it, but I burned out. And here I am, podcasting, the gravest insult. Special shout out to my old roommate / coworker. I don't think they want to be doxxed. I'm not sure, but you know, again, they're kind of my way into game development and a really talented developer and a great friend. What a ride. By the way, speaking of which, one more crunch story. Me and this roommate had worked a very long day, 12-hour day on the Fantastic Four game. It's a Friday, and we're like, fuck it. Let's just fucking go to Houston's. And so we went straight from work to Houston's. At our studio, in the parking garage, there was a very nice parking garage attendant who you'd see and you'd say hi to. We get to Houston's. The guy valeting our car is that parking garage attendant. He went to his second job. So we'd worked 12 hours. He was in the middle of his second shift. And it was just one of those things where, you know, again, as bad as it was for me as an office worker in game development, you know, people in the true working class, it's even tougher. And again, I don't even know why I added that, but it was another thing that sort of lended perspective to what this world is. As for my thoughts on the Tim Story movie, Fantastic Four, which the game was based off of, I never saw it. For our segment this episode, earlier this week I sat down with my Doughboys co-host Mike Mitchell of Twisted Metal Season 2. We recorded it right after recording back-to-back Doughboys episodes, so we're a little punchy, but it was a fun chat, so take a listen. All right, Mitch, Twisted Metal Season 2.
That's right,
coming
Wags.
July 31st to Peacock. I know, you would be circuitous about what's happening in the show, but your character Stu has a big presence in Season 2.
Stu is there in season Stu, some call it.
Some people are saying Season Stu?
People are saying Season Stu.
That's wild.
Wags, the power dynamic has shifted. I'm your guest now.
You're my friend.
Well, yes, but in the podcast world, I am your guest.
But you've guested on Get Played before. You know the drill.
I certainly do.
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
We always kind of go into a co-host dynamic, I think, naturally, if we're on any pod. Or if we're both guesting on a different pod.
It's always good to have your powers when I'm on another pod.
Have my powers?
Yeah, when our powers combine, we're a bigger force.
It's true.
I always
Bigger physically.
600 pounds and 3 inches. Is that the combined? You got a big hog, usually, is what I joke about.
We've got
So it didn't make sense, but it was fun to pretend you had a small one for a second.
For our, that can be canon for Get Played.
Yeah, the Get Played canon is that.
So we have a...
Can I tell you my favorite episode of Get Played?
So we have a Twisted Metal. The new season of Twisted Metal is coming out.
New season of Twisted Metal is out, Wags, on Peacock, July 31st.
That's right, yeah.
Streaming. If you got Peacock, download Peacock. And if you're in another country, which I know that you have international listeners, you might have to do some digging to figure out where it is, because sometimes it's on another streaming service.
I know we have a lot of listeners of the podcast who are, we have a lot of avid gamers, and so they're familiar with the Twisted Metal franchise. They maybe played the PlayStation 1 originals. They maybe played Twisted Metal Black on PS2.
I got news for you. Twisted Metal 3 and 4 you can get right now on the PlayStation Store.
That's just available on the PlayStation Store if people want to mess around with that.
I think you have to be PlayStation Plus subscriber, I believe.
Sure.
I think that's what it is if you want to download it.
But I know from talking to some of the people behind the scenes that the show, although a lot of the canon is invented, although a lot of the lore comes from, the writers and creators, it does all have a basis in the original game, and it also comes from a deep love and appreciation for the original franchises.
For sure, yes. I think that there are a lot of people who can be a little bit specific about the games, and they don't want to see too many changes, and I understand that. And I think the showrunner, Michael Jonathan Smith, and all the writers did like a great job of keeping a lot of the same character elements and a lot of the story elements, but then also adding things to make it a TV show, which I think is that's the hard thing to balance.
And a big part of like the show, the actual production of it, is like vehicle action, car combat.
100%.
This is like basically the franchise that birthed that genre of gaming, or at least made it mainstream.
The Mario Kart and this. I mean, these are the Mount Battlemore, I guess you could put them on. Mount Battle Kartmore.
I think Mount Battle Kartmore is
Mount
correct.
Battle Kartmore, I think it's up there. Driving battle games. Who is on the Mount Rushmore? Mario Kart is one.
Yeah, sure.
Twisted Metal's got to be up there.
Yeah,
you put Diddy Kong Racing. What else do you put up there?
I mean, I think probably some people would go back to an earlier era, and I'm trying to like put like a Battle Zone on there, you know. But also I do think like a big part of Twisted Metal is like the aesthetic and the tone, right? Like, because even though Super Mario Kart, the battle mode there like had some of those elements that are heightened and expanded upon the Twisted Metal franchise, it was the sort of thing that is like, okay, this is a little bit more of a grown up / edgy / funny sort of treatment of it.
That's right. Yes, David Jaffe, I believe, who created the game.
Yeah.
He created,
goes on to create the God of War franchise.
The God of War franchise.
Yeah.
He's a heavy hitter as far as video game franchises go.
And I know that you yourself are a big time gamer. You play a lot of games. I know you're trying to play less these days because you just have other things going on, and you get very compulsive towards 100% in games. I just know that's your tendency. But there is, and we talked about it earlier on this very episode. We're recording this on the eve of the Donkey Kong Bonanza release.
That's right.
I know you're pretty pumped for that. I think that one's going to pull you back in.
I haven't played. I try to get into kart. It was speaking of battle games.
Yes.
Of Mount Battle Kartmore.
The Switch 2 Mario Kart.
The Switch 2 Mario Kart, and it didn't pull me in 100%. I played every level and I liked it, but I don't know the mechanics of it. How did you feel about it? I wasn't crazy about it.
I just have felt the same way about Mario Kart for probably 20 years now, which is just, I think I'm just past the point in my life where I'm playing Mario Kart. You know, like I have an appreciation for them. I know for some people it's like this is a system seller for them, but I'm just less into it. I'm way more excited for a game like Donkey Kong Bonanza because just like a straight ahead platformer, that's what
platformers
Nintendo
are my favorite
means to me.
That's my favorite type of game. Anyways, I like platformers more than anything else. And I'm very excited. I am gonna play in probably 100% Donkey Kong Bonanza. Is my guess. Mario Kart. I wonder how you'll feel about this. But the more like video games advance, like the less I kind of like Mario. I think Mario Kart 8 was great, and I think that was like the last gasp for me of Mario Kart was Mario Kart 8. And I liked the idea of the open world thing, but it didn't do it enough for me. Mario Kart 64 was the last one because it still felt like you're making your own shortcuts by like turning left on a bridge or something. You know what I mean? And I'm like, after that, I just don't care anymore. Platformers is it for me.
Also corresponds with the end of childhood for you.
And that's also true.
I mean, that might just be it.
What did
it.
But I liked Mario Kart 8, and I would love a Twisted Metal update. I never played.
That's what I mean. I know you don't have any insight into that, but it is a sort of thing. Wow, breaking news.
Do I? I don't know.
I guess I should just say breaking news here because it's not Doughboys.
Yeah. Breaking
gaming pews.
I'm trying to
breaking pews.
That's me at church.
Get newsed. That was good.
I never. Did you play Twisted Metal Black? Oh, I'm spitting at you.
I did play Twisted Metal Black. Yeah.
A little Dilophosaur action for me. Yeah. I did not play Twisted Metal Black, and I know that's like a fan. That's like a huge fan favorite one.
I think people consider that like the apex of the franchise. Yeah,
it's a darker entry in the Twisted Metal series. Sure. I think that people wanted a lot of that. The show can be very dark, by the way, and this season is. I'm gonna say it. This season's gory as hell. It's fucking bloody and gory, and there's dark stuff in it. But
so maybe turn up the brightness on your TV.
Well, not that sort of dark, Wags. Though there is some stuff like that too. There's night scenes. Okay. So there is darkness that's involved.
So maybe have your phone's flashlight feature handy so you can see what's going on.
No, it's the perfect dark, Wags.
Perfect dark.
Now we're talking. Were you dark? Did you play Darkman? I liked Darkman a lot.
Did they play Darkman?
Yeah, it was. Oh no, Dark. I'm so sorry. Shadow Man is what I was thinking.
Shadow Man. Yes, I did not play Shadow Man, but I remember Shadow Man. Darkman, the Sam Raimi film starring Liam Neeson.
I know, a big blind spot for me.
Liam Neeson, a man with a huge hog.
That's right. Yes, an Evian bottle-sized hog.
Yeah.
Was it Janice Dickinson who wrote
that? I believe so. Yes. Yeah. The supermodel. Like a dead German hanging out of a window, right?
Is that what she said?
I heard someone else say that.
A dead German hanging out a window? Yes. This is like the Twisted Metal Black of your get played. We're getting dark here.
It's a but anyway, yes, the Twisted Metal Black was it definitely had a little bit of a different tone.
Wanted, but the show has some of that. I mean, I
think so. I will say as someone, I have not seen season 2 as of as of us recording this interview. I watched all of season 1. It definitely has moments of like sadness and humanity. It definitely has some really bleak stuff. And we're living in a post-apocalyptic society where most of the Earth's population has been they got got. That's pretty inherently dark from a premise standpoint.
And I do think that they have fun with the show. And I probably wouldn't if it was like a true dark drama. Yeah. I don't know if I would be on the show. So
I could pull that off.
I could. I mean, I think I could. Look, I do think I could pull it off. But I do think that the fact that it's a comedy show and it's having fun. That's what I like about the show. Because there's a lot of video game shows that take themselves very seriously. I won't point any fingers at any shows that take themselves very seriously.
Yes.
And maybe have some bloaters involved or something, but it's a very serious show. But
you have a sort of Mason-y haze to them. We're not naming any specific show.
We're not going to be specific. Yeah.
But they're sort of like this like high art seriousness, this prestige TV series
about people that they're like the last of the people.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And there's like. This show isn't going for like it's not trying to have that sort of sheen about it. It's like it's a show that's fun and it revels in being funny.
It's giving a different perspective than that sort of show, and I think it's a lot of fun. And I do think that this year there's like all the stunt driving, which I told you about, pod drivers, which you were very fascinated by.
We should talk about this a little bit. So I think for the people who are just like curious how TV is made, the process of how stunt driving works, which there's a lot of vehicle action.
If someone saw you on the street driving down the street, they'd say that they would describe you as a pod driver. I'm sure, right?
Because of my resemblance to Anakin Skywalker.
Because you're a podcaster and a driver.
Oh, I got it. Not like, hey, it's Ben Quadraneros.
I don't know if you would be insulted by being called Ben Quadraneros.
That guy's a real fuck up.
Yeah. Well,
doesn't get past the starting line.
Didn't Sebulba fuck with his? I thought Sebulba did fuck with his.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. Sebulba doesn't play by the rules.
We're talking Star Wars, and a producer has fallen asleep. Hey, episode the Pod Racer. There's another. Does that?
Yeah, we revisited that on Get Played, and it actually holds up pretty decently.
Wow.
I mean, it's got some jank to the UX, but it's a pretty Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Was a pretty fun pod racing sim. But wait, let's talk
about actual pod drivers.
Yes, pod drivers. So this is I'm just describe what a pod driver is.
A pod driver is a person that is stationed on top of your car and kind of like almost what looks like a roll cage on top of your car. And he or she has controls of your car, and they have
basically like a wheel and pedals up there and a gear shift.
They can control everything that's going. It's kind of like a go-kart. It's basically they are plugged into the engine, and they can control everything that's going on in the car. Your brake and gas in your wheel are not doing anything. You can still step on them and do everything, but it's actually, I think you can maybe still step on the brake possibly to like break it, but no, actually, I don't even think it's a professional driver. My guy was an actual like NASCAR driver.
Yeah, so these are pro stunt drivers who work on all sorts of like high end productions, and so you got the best of the best up there as your crew, and so you're down there as an actor. You're pretending to drive, you're miming driving while someone else has the controls, and then in post production, we're as shooting it, and while shooting it, we're framing that out, and in post production, they're painting it out visually so that it looks like you're in control of the vehicle. But there are there's some really, death-defying stunts where you're basically just a passenger for this thing.
100%. Yeah. Do you want me to tell you the real thing is?
Yeah, please.
They will do the exterior shots and have stunt drivers in our cars.
Got it.
And then, so the exterior ones, they get to show them being crazy without the pod drivers on top of it. And then with the pod drivers on top of the car,
they can do all the close-ups.
They're putting cameras on us, and you're seeing the window, you're seeing stuff zoom by us and stuff like that. And Wags, it's terrifying. It was like, the way I described it was like scarier than the scariest roller coaster I've ever been on. It was like we were going 60 miles per hour. We were driving through basically courses or something that. And we were driving by stuff very fast.
Hazardous exteriors and interiors.
Yes, going 60 plus miles per hour or something. You know what I mean?
And you have to stage it where it looks perilous, but by doing that, it actually is perilous to be driving through.
They really were trying to do to get the vibe of the game this season.
Right.
Which it's still a show, and you're still going to see people outside of cars because that's a TV show.
I'm out.
God damn it! What you're getting?
No,
you're getting a lot of car action. You're getting so much car action.
I think from what I've heard, from what I've inferred from hearing about the second season, more car action than the first season.
100%.
Wow, that's awesome.
There's so much more car action. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, there's multiple episodes with a lot of car action.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah.
Do you have as an actor?
Go on.
As an actor, as a thespian, as someone who treads the boards, do you ever have do you ever have a scene that's really going to stress you out in advance of, whether it's some stunt driving sequences, whether it's some sort of hand-to-hand combat, whether it's just something where you have to get particularly emotionally vulnerable and raw? When you have something in advance that you're maybe dreading, how do you prepare for that?
Well, that is a great question.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, as you know, I've dealt with long COVID stuff. There was one scene where I had to go to one emotional place that was very hard for me. And I won't say any specifics about it.
Yeah.
And I think I got it out. But then there's another scene later in the show where I had to get very emotional at one point. And so that was you are thinking, you want to get into a good headspace. You're an actor. You sell yourself short. But
I'm not really an actor. I've acted in some stuff, but I'm not someone who's that's a thing I pursue or a thing it's stuff I stumble into.
Did you ever do a scene where you had to cry before or no?
No.
Or get upset or anything like that?
No. Not really, even in my life.
Hopefully you practice enough so the day when I die, you can at least pretend to be upset.
Oh, the Patreon.
I also just like picture you like at my wake, like slamming on the coffin, being really big, and be like, "I can't believe he's gone.
Take me instead." That's a good move. I love that guy.
Yeah, I mean, some of that stuff is, and you get like, I get when some actors are like annoying about stuff like that because like when you're trying to have like being in a space of like not even on Twisted Metal, but if you're like, I need to be like really emotionally vulnerable or be sad or something, and then you're sitting and talking with people or someone that's talking to you and like, and I'm never a person who's like, don't talk to me. I'll never do that ever. But like you're trying to get worked up to be upset and you're either thinking of things that would make you upset or like just trying to really like that is always difficult to do, I feel like. But I'm always a person who will just talk to people and this is probably why I shouldn't do this. I should be like but being in the zone, I think is helpful if I'm going to go out there and like bawl my eyes out or something. But for me, more so what you were saying of like the stunt driving, I just didn't want to fuck up because I didn't want to fuck up for those guys because it's like all of these people that are working on this show and like they're doing this extraordinary stunt driving and you're like, I don't want to fuck up this take because they're risking their lives to do this, as I guess you are too in a way, but like you're like, they're very good at what they're doing and they're keeping me safe and I don't want to be like, what was my line, and like forget it or whatever. So I think
it was
that to me is like, don't fuck up. So like in those scenes I like specifically didn't, and I think that you like when you're driving in, like you're kind of naturally nervous anyways because you're if you're in a competition or whatever, so that's helpful to use that or whatever. But
do you have a like, because I know as part of the process there are some times when an actor will be physically driving themselves. Did you do any actual driving? Or there were times where I did drive some stuff on my own. And there's some, I know there's some, I mean, there's some action in season 1. I imagine there's more like action in season 2, like in terms of like, hand to hand, in terms of gunplay. Was there anything you got to do where it's like, that was pretty cool?
There's some hand to hog too. There was a lot of stuff I got to do there was a lot of cool stuff.
Did you learn how to do something, or like I can do that now?
No. Oh, actually no. You know what?
Yeah.
I'll say this. I can say this.
Yeah, because I know you'd be vague about spoilers. The show's not out yet.
There was like a day where I did stunts. There was like stunt stuff, so I had to work with, and the stunt team is so good, and I hope the stunt people win an Emmy because they're so good on the show. It's crazy. They're so fucking good on the entire show. But I had to learn. There's like a couple things where I am like hand to hand stuff that I had to, and like we did stunt stuff, and like we went and worked like a whole day to like do stuff like that. It was great. It was cool.
Can you show me? And this is audio only, so like you can just.
Oh right, I forgot it was fucking audio only.
We'll pretend. Yeah, just show me what you did.
There was a little like you know what I'm saying?
Fuck, that was cool as hell.
Yeah,
Holy shit. Fuck.
Oh,
how'd you do that?
And then there was a little of this.
Holy shit, that's amazing. I can't believe they show you how to do that. What the wow. Mitch, this is so cool. People's minds are going to be blown. Okay, now people are maybe figuring out what you're doing. It's such a great show.
Thank you, Wags, and thank you for promoting on your guys' show.
I mean this genuinely. Like we all enjoyed the show. We said the same thing when we talked about the TV show Fallout. If we don't like a video game adaptation, we're not necessarily gonna shit on it on the show because like we may know people who we have worked with or want to work with at some point, but we just maybe won't cover it. We maybe won't dedicate any space to it.
Sounds like someone's angling to work with Mason at some point.
But I can honestly say that like I watch Twisted Metal to support you, to support my friend.
Thank you.
You're such a great actor, and I'm always excited to when you get opportunities because you deserve them. You should be in more stuff.
Thank you.
But yeah, to watch the show, I was so delighted that it was actually good. It was actually something I enjoyed, and I do think the season 1 genuinely made me laugh. Has some really cool action. I'm really excited to see what y'all can achieve. with a bigger scale and a bigger budget and a lot more stew.
A lot more stew. I mean, also, I'm glad that you didn't hate it and had to lie to me for like 2 years, like maybe even longer. Who knows how long it will go?
But you also know me. I wouldn't lie to you.
I know. That's the other side. That's the worst part of it. I think you would be like, it wasn't for me, but I think you did great.
Yeah.
You'd say something nice, of course.
Yeah.
No, I think that you will like season 2 more than you liked season 1. And
That's
I thought
awesome.
season 1, they did a great job in like, it's not as it doesn't have as big of a budget as a lot of other shows do. But I think that everything this season, everything is bigger. They did everything bigger this year. And like you said, I'm a fan of Fallout. I think they did a great job with Fallout, and I think they did a great job with this show. And I hope we get to make a third one, and I think people are really going to like it. So please watch it.
I don't want to spoil something from the show, but everything is bigger, and then you have a scene, of course, where you go full frontal and go, not everything is bigger.
Yeah, it's the only time in the show where I break the fourth wall. And we do a Flintstones joke.
It's a living. Your hog is a pterodactyl.
I'm not trying to spoil too much, but you do see a lot of the Spoon Man on the.
Okay, all right. Something to look forward to.
The Stew Man. You see a lot of the Stew Man.
And get that pause button ready. Twisted Metal Season 2 is on Peacock. People should check it out. If you're in the States, it's on Peacock. Check where you are globally, where you can find Twisted Metal Season 2 streaming. July 31st, 3 episodes are out, and
That's
then
right, Wags.
two new episodes every Thursday?
Yes, so 3 episodes the first Thursday on July 31st. So the first 3 episodes will be out on July 31st. And those first 3 episodes, especially episode 3, you're gonna like it. Episode 3, I'm just hearing a lot of great stuff about. And the first 2 episodes also fantastic. And then it goes 2, 2, 2, 3.
Wow.
So the final episode towards the end of August is 3 episodes.
So basically, July 31st through all of August, you'll be able to watch season in its entirety. Check it out on Peacock. Congratulations,
Thank you, Wax.
Thanks so much for being here.
You're a good friend, and you're a good writer, and a good actor, Wax.
Oh, what a nice thing to say.
You don't talk about that too often, but
we should shout out our comic book real quick as well. Our podcast, Doughboys.
That's right.
We have a comic book with it that's really great, and I think you can enjoy even if you're not a Doughboys listener. Check that out at brkids.com.
Hey, maybe we'll make a live action version of the comic book someday.
It's not going to happen.
Oh, whatever. We'll see ya. Bye.
Wow. Thanks to Mitch. Seriously, everyone check out Twisted Metal. If you're in the U.S., it's on Peacock. Season 2 premieres July 31st. It's a great show. I just think it's so fun, and the action is so awesome. By the way, I did get Mitch's impressions on Donkey Kong Bananza after he played it. We talked about it briefly during the interview. I'm quoting here. It's awesome. I love it, honestly. It fucking rules. Well said, Spoon Man. And thanks to all of you for listening to an old man grapple with a slow decay of time. That's this week's Get Played. Our producers, Rochelle Chen, Ranch, Yard _ Sard. Our music comes by Ben Prunty, benpruntymusic.com. Our artist by Duck Brigade, design duckbrigade.com. Get Played merch is available at kinshipgoods.com. Link in the show description. Also check out Get Animated, our sister show on Patreon, where we're watching Birdie Wing, Golf Girl's Story. A lot of fun and a little horny. Patreon.com/getplayed. As for what got played this week, my fucking 20s. What an L for old Wags. Bye.
That was a HeadGum podcast.